Okay, good morning, folks. We're here today with Carolina Fejera from the Cayman Islands Red Cross, who's going to be sharing with us just some information about the disaster recovery efforts for the Bahamas and Hurricane Dorian. A lot of persons have been contacting Cayman Mall Road directly and indirectly, essentially asking how they can help because everyone, of course, remembers Hurricane Ivan and the position that we were in, and the Cayman community just being so incredibly altruistic and humanitarian at our heart and our core. A lot of people just want to help. But one of the things that became very, very obvious right away is that despite you having the desire to help, oftentimes there's a right way to help that will actually benefit the people of the Bahamas properly as opposed to trying to help and more or less getting in your own way. So we're going to speak to Carolina today, and she's going to give us some information about what the Red Cross has been working on and how people can truly help at this moment in time. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Cayman Wild Roads podcast. Can you tell us, when did the Red Cross begin their efforts to try to assist the people of the Bahamas? Because obviously this has just happened.
Exactly.
But we know the Red Cross is always ahead of the game, and you guys have been monitoring the situation.
Right. So, I guess the first thing for people to understand is that the Red Cross is actually a global movement. Yeah, there are national societies or overseas branches in just about every country in the world. So, the Bahamian Red Cross has been on the ground and was there from before, and that's why we were able to get initial rapid assessments that were done even as the storm was moving off, because as you know, the storm sat in the Bahamas for at least 2 days, if not longer. And so the initial rapid assessments that were done on the ground is where it is that we get, the estimate of the 13,000 homes that were either severely damaged or destroyed, as well as we're looking at about 99% of those people in Abaco and Grand Bahama, who we think will need some aspect of disaster response support. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we've pretty much hit the ground running when it comes to the Bahamian Red Cross and other Red Cross officials who are on the ground. It's still too early to tell the exact extent of the devastation, but that is something that, as they're able to do more assessments, we will get more information. We do know that from both the Cayman community and how kind and giving people are in terms of wanting to do things, and also from the perspective of seeing what we were seeing already from the news reports that are coming out there, that there was going definitely to be a need for some type of appeal. Mm-hmm. So that's why even though the Bahamian Red Cross is working very hard still to try to assess the damage, we knew that a monetary appeal would be the right thing to do, because there is the flexibility that we need to be able to meet the needs of the community in a way that other types of appeals may not necessarily meet.
Right. So there's always this initial response of, let me go through my closet and pick out stuff that I'm not using and put it in a box and send it overseas. Why is that knee-jerk reaction not the correct one?
I think if we look back in terms of even what happened with us here after Hurricane Ivan, right? What you need immediately after a disaster starts to change pretty quickly as the disaster kind of moves forward and as the community itself starts to rally, right? And it's not as if Cayman and the people of Cayman are the only people who are having that response. This, it's like now with social media and everything else, people are seeing this from across the world, and if everybody is having that response, essentially what's happening, and we know this from decades and decades of disaster response information and lessons learned, is that we're essentially creating a second disaster in already vulnerable places with vulnerable people who are kind of having to bear the brunt of these good intentions, but that have gone horribly astray. And one of the reasons why it is that we put out a flyer to try to explain to people what this is because this isn't new. 1998 Hurricane Mitch, that's one of the ones that stuck with me because I joined the Red Cross in 1997. And hearing that there were medical supplies that were needed in Honduras, and there was an airplane full of medical supplies that gets there, and can't land because the tarmac is overrun with clothes. And not clothes that people can use, but high heeled shoes and winter coats and other things like that. And that delayed those medical supplies from getting to the people by 48 hours.
Wow.
48 hours is a critical time
Of
in
course.
any emergency response.
Absolutely.
You know, and even now in the 2000s, and it's just like after the tsunami, 2004, which is a year that is near and dear to our hearts, you know, after the
Yes.
tsunami, piles and piles of clothing that were donated lay on a beach in Indonesia. They were sort of created like a mini Mount Rushmore there.
Oh my gosh.
Very quickly went toxic, and the government officials had to douse it in gasoline and set it aflame, and the remnants of that went out into the sea. Now think about that, and it's just like, you know, I can't think of any person who would be okay with this idea that there is a 60% chance that your what we call unsolicited good is going to either end up in a landfill, end up as trash, or not get to where it is that you're going and it needs to go.
Wow.
So that's what we've been trying to do, because we did experience that here after Hurricane Ivan. A lot of my time and my colleagues' times got taken up with going to Owen Roberts and trying to clear goods that we had no idea were coming. And we did also get the winter things. I remember actually finding soiled underwear in the donation boxes. And, you know, we found there was a box that was full of only left foot shoes. And it's just like, and it's strange. And the amount of time and resources that it takes for you to go out there, drive, get people to load this up, then
Right.
sort through it, decide what goes into the dump and whatnot.
Yeah, that's
So-
precious wasted time.
And it took me away from the community to make sure that I got the things that were needed to the community, but instead I have to go and clear this. Why? Because the ports also need the space for the other things that are coming
Exactly.
in, right?
Wow.
So it's that the difference between knowing where it is that you're sending things to, knowing what the timeline is, knowing that that organization has a plan, has the warehousing, has the transportation, and can get to the affected areas,
Exactly.
as opposed to collecting things that after the fact you're like, wait, how do we even get the shipment over there?
Exactly.
Because the ports have been damaged, and it's just like, you know, the runways might
Yep.
be limited. So how do you do that?
Right. It's just like, you know, in the article that we posted a couple days ago, we mentioned the Haiti relief efforts because a lot of people here, again, were galvanized and, oh, yeah, let's help Haiti, let's do this. And people made a lot of donations. And to the best of my knowledge, those donations remain to this day. And here we are in 2019 in a container here in the Cayman Islands. And they never went anywhere because the person who was collecting the donated items didn't think far ahead. Like, how are we actually going to get and pay for this huge container of stuff to leave this country? Because of course that's not free. That takes another concerted effort. That takes, you know, one of the shipping companies getting on board and either, you know, comping some of that cost or whatever. But there's more than one step involved in disaster relief.
Yes.
And that's important, I think, for people to really understand.
Yeah, because it's not just in terms of, even if we have everything done on our side. So even if we have the goodwill of people who donated the container, who will go get it over there for free, and get it, it's like, what happens when it reaches the other end?
Right.
And it's just like, and the problem is, so if you're looking at Dorian, so even if you get it into, say, Nassau, and it's just like,
Yeah.
but we know that the affected areas are not right there. So how are we
Exactly.
now getting that to where it is that it needs to go? And those are the delays and the things that, again, in that critical period of time where the needs of the populations are changing,
Right.
that it becomes problematic. Because you and I are hearing about today, you know, in terms of saying, oh, well, you know, send water or food and whatnot.
Right.
If it takes us 3 weeks to collect all that to get over there,
Yeah,
then it's just
that's
like,
not
if
the need in 3
that's
weeks.
no longer the need. And it's just like, so, and it's not as if you're not, you know, and it's just, and the issue then becomes with the population that you're trying to give them something that they no longer need.
Right.
And we experienced that here during Ivan. It can become very frustrating where it is that, oh, you know, we're here to assist. This is what we have. And people are
Yes.
going, right, but this is not what I need. So we need to ensure that we treat people who are already incredibly vulnerable with dignity and respect, and we address the needs where they're at the time in which they're
Right.
at.
And explain then how money would be used to address those needs. So more specifically,
Sure.
why monetary donations are most effective.
So essentially, as the monetary donations allow the flexibility that is needed to get what people want and need in the quantity that they need at the time in which they need, right? So it's just like in immediate relief efforts, it may be in terms of, trying to make sure that you cover large areas of the population to ensure that they have water, for instance, right? So, like the water issue, the amount of money that it may cost to send bottled water as a supply for a population of about 40,000. It may cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to send it to as bottled water, but a fraction of the cost to send it as these sort of water filtration systems, right? So it's about looking at what is sustainable, what is best for the community and the environment, and what is it that is going to get people on their feet rather than have them rely constantly on these things that are coming out. So that's the flexibility. But as you get further along and needs of people change and the response changes, because then, okay, so you have your water, you have your food and whatnot. Now let's talk about shelter. Now let's talk about rebuilding. Now let's talk about, what happens to people when they don't have jobs and they still have these things that they have to figure out because their places of work is destroyed and there are no other options. So, and it's just like, and the cash can translate into the goods, and it can also translate into giving back to the local economy, giving people spending power so that they can make decisions down the line as to what it is that they need to spend the money on and to support the economy, which is going to take a huge hit. In the Caribbean, tourism is a pillar for just about every single one of our small islands, and it's just like, and this is going to impact them greatly. And that's where it is that, in terms of the cash comes in right now at this point in time. And we know this because we live in the most expensive place in the world. And we know that the International Federation of the Red Cross isn't just working for us in Cayman or us in the Caribbean. It is we're a global entity. Therefore, when they need to purchase things, they have buying power, and therefore that $1 that we can give turns into $7 on the ground because of the amount of things that they might be purchasing. So there's all of those things that need to be taken into account. And I think it's also important, something that often comes up when it comes to the money, the fees, and all of that. And it's like the Cayman Islands Red Cross sends everything that we collect on to the recipient nation, right? So it's important that we don't take a cut out of this. There is no fee. This is everything that we do to get the message out is just like we end up seeing as our contribution to the cause, because we still I have to do child protection work. That's my day to day. Dorian doesn't stop me from doing that, but I still have to pay attention to Dorian because this is what we do. This is how the Red Cross operates, and this is going to to be on the ground. We're talking about the Bahamian Red Cross. We're talking about another small local organization that has been working with the people before this disaster happened, and we'll be doing it after the cameras have gone, and I think it's just like we forget about the fact that this might be in the news for a week, but this is going to take years for people to come back.
And we remember that.
We remember that, yes.
Some people still haven't recovered from Ivan, to be honest.
No, they haven't. And it's just like, or even looking now in BVI, like the BVI response is still ongoing. The British Red Cross is still committed to BVI, and we're 2 years out from when the actual storm happened. So they're still giving support because we know recovery takes much longer than what it is that we see on the news.
Yes. So one other point I wanted to inquire about is we see a lot of official NGOs, unofficial NGOs, just kind of church groups and people getting together. I saw another flyer go out today, or drop off stuff at this particular location. What message would you like to say to the organizers of again, I'm sure that they're all trying to do good in their own way.
Yes, yeah.
But it seems to me that as a country, we need to have a unified effort. And certainly that can be led by the Cayman Islands Red Cross, along with the Cayman Islands government, because the government, with the governor, have made statements in terms of what they can make available to the people of the Bahamas for immediate relief, the use of a helicopter, etc. But just to any of those organizers out there, what would you say to them right now about kind of not going forward with these efforts to collect all of this stuff, as you say, that you're now calling sort of the second disaster?
Right. So there's a difference between solicited and unsolicited
Yes.
goods, right? So, for instance, I know that there are, I think, some efforts that are going on where people are actually leaving today and getting over to the Bahamas within the next
Mm-hmm.
couple of days and whatnot. And they have a list that was put out that they're going by, that was sent by the Bahamian government, and there are other things that are going
Right.
on. Those are solicited goods. They're going to get there within the time frame, so that is a completely separate story. Yeah.
Yes.
So both for organizers, but also for donors. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because and I've been part of the reason why we're doing this, and we've been doing the media rounds, is because people feel very, close, and very, they care a lot about the cash, but you're still spending money to give
Sure.
goods, right? So it's not just because you're not giving cash that you're not spending money. You are. So be as protective of your goods as you are of your cash, and it's about asking the questions of, who is this going to? How is it actually getting there? Who is going to receive it? How is it going to be distributed? Because those are all of the things that organizations need to be able to answer for anything that they're going to be able to do, right? So it's just like, right now we are collecting funds. The funds are going to go to the
Right.
Bahamian Red Cross. The Bahamian Red Cross will be on the ground to determine the beneficiaries, but right now it appears to be the islands of Abaco and Grand Bahama. And it's just, so those are all the questions that are legitimate, and they should be able to answer that, because well, as you've said, and we've seen that before, and we've experienced it before. Well-intentioned people start collecting goods, haven't thought it through, and then get a call like, "Hey, we need some help getting this out of here." And it's like, we can't help you at that point, because we have been we've been at the receiving end of that after Ivan. And it's just like, and this goes against our policy, this goes against best practices, and so we can help you come up with creative solutions, but then you also owe the donors an explanation of that, and the donor should be asking for that. So it's about, be empowered as a donor, and and ask the right questions, the same way that you ask of us, ask of anybody else, which is, what are the next steps? Because it doesn't end when you drop off that case of water. You should want to know, and it is food for thought for other organizations. And there's more to disaster response than
meets the eye, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And and as I mentioned earlier, like you don't get an accountant to come in for a plumbing disaster, and it's just like, so there's more to it. And I know that there's people are driven by goodwill and the will to want to do well,
Yes.
but there's more to this than there, and we're also getting questions about volunteering. Just like, can I volunteer my time there? It's like, it would be irresponsible of us to send people who are not trained to go into a disaster zone,
Of
because
course.
that too has created issues. We have seen people who have sort of landed in these places as volunteers, and then having to be rescued themselves because suddenly they became beneficiaries. So there's more to it. So if this is an area of interest and a passion for you, get involved with us. Volunteer with us as the Red Cross. Get trained. Become part of the global movement. And that way, when there are opportunities for deployment, you're going there and you are trained and you have a support mechanism and you're ready.
Absolutely. Wow. We were in our podcast show last night. We interviewed a gentleman in the Bahamas. He's in Freeport, and he was talking about having to rescue a number of persons himself. And one of the concerns that I had, because I know after Ivan, we saw a spike in suicides here on our island, children having a difficult time coping. So does the Cayman Islands Red Cross, or even the Bahamian Red Cross, work with other agencies to offer emotional relief? Because after you get through this initial shock of, okay, I've got food and water sorted, I'm getting my shelter back, those sorts of things, we often forget about the mind and the emotional component, and the fact that this has been an extremely traumatic event. I mean, I have been honestly feeling a bit overwhelmed by the images on social media, by all of the videos, because it's bringing back memories, and we didn't get hit anywhere near what the Bahamian people have experienced, in my opinion, because they have a lot of loss of life. And but I started to personally feel a bit stressed about it, just seeing those images. And Ivan was 15 years ago. It sounds crazy, but I had dogs that I know their lives were shortened because of the stress they went through because of Hurricane Ivan. So what support will be offered to these persons for post traumatic stress and their emotional well being?
So within the Red Cross movement, we actually have a psychosocial support mechanism, which we benefited from after Hurricane Ivan. We actually had people from the Jamaican Red Cross who were deployed here to work with us directly, as in the people, the responders, right? So the staff and the volunteers. So there is a mechanism in place that is also part of the National Intervention Team training that we offer. All the Red Crosses offer locally to prepare people for that type of response as well. And it is something that the International Federation of the Red Cross takes very seriously, which is why R&R is a mandated part of disaster response. So for people on the ground, I remember after Hurricane Ivan, I was told to leave in December, and they're like, you need a, you can't stay here long. This is, you've been doing this since September, so there's a mandated break when it comes to that. So that is definitely something. Psychosocial support is something that we take very seriously. So to what extent the Bahamian Red Cross volunteers have in fact gotten that level of preparation, it would be difficult for us to tell, but we do know that there is a regional structure in place to support them as needed. I do know that on a local level, we tend to work with professionals who are able to provide that level of support, because not all disasters are going to be quite like Dorian, right? But I know, for instance, as part of we're looking at our plan, God forbid if there was supposed to be any kind of air or sea disaster here that would be needed, how do we get in partners like the Employee Assistance Program, as well as government departments like the Department of Counseling Services, to then provide that level of support for the grieving families. So it is something that is very much an active part of our response, something that is at the forefront. That will be coming into play more and more. But you're absolutely correct. And it's just like after Ivan, we know for a fact that it wasn't just animals. There are people whose lives were severely shortened because of it. I remember the level of stress that we could feel in the air, and we still can for people who are around, after Ivan, when it would rain, and what that raindrops and rainfall, which is supposed to be one of the most relaxing things in the world, became a trigger for a lot of people, and it's just like, and we're at our 15th anniversary. And I think that along with, being mindful of Dorian and trying to help out, part of the lesson here needs to be that, we need to be prepared. We need to be talking to our kids about this. We need to create our family disaster plan. And we need to be mindful that the world has changed significantly in the last 15 years.
Absolutely.
That, Ivan gave us a baseline, but Dorian and Irma have been game changers.
Yes.
And that means that our disaster plans should change accordingly. That you need to know what you can handle or what's best for your family. You need to discuss it with them, and you need to have a plan, because waiting until the last minute to try to make decisions, it's going to make everybody more anxious, and it's really going to create a massive burden for your family on every level.
Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy to think that it has been 15 years. We're coming up in the next week and a half on 15 years, because there's a whole generation of kids that have been born during that time who know nothing about Ivan. They've only heard the name and maybe heard sort of these stories from, family members, but have no comprehension of what that meant. So it just really is very sobering.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us just finally, people who want to donate or want to reach out to you, what's the best mechanism? I believe that there's an actual Bank of Butterfield account.
There is a Bank of Butterfield account. Yes. So they can do that through our Bank of Butterfield account. If they want to drop anything off here to our office, we're located on Cayman Corporate Center, which is 27 Hospital Road. Our headquarters is under construction, so this is our administrative offices. And also, if they have any questions or want to know more, I respect the fact that people have questions. I respect the fact that people want to know. I also understand that, when it's just you hear a lot of things about when it comes to disaster relief and whatnot, and this is what we're here for, because in the Caribbean, we are the local organizations that are on the ground. We are, there's just we're not the ones raising millions of dollars. We're certainly not paying out millions of dollars to staff. And it's just but we've been in the community before the disaster happened, during the disaster, and we'll be there long after. So there's a sustainability clause. So if anyone has any questions as well, my email is deputy@redcross.org.ky, and my number is 916-1742.
All right, folks. So you've heard that. Please share this video. We're going to essentially try to get the word out there on how best you can assist. Again, don't get in the way of the recovery relief efforts. We've been speaking here with Carolina Ferreira from the Cayman Islands. That name is always tricky. From the Cayman Islands Red Cross, giving us an idea again of why it's important to really leave disaster relief up to the experts. And that is the bottom line, I think. No matter how much you want to contribute or how to help, they've got the experience. They know the roadblocks and bumps that are ahead for the Bahamian people. And as we as a people will continue, obviously, to do what we can and keep them in our prayers and thoughts. But it's about an organized effort here. And I thought that that message was really quite important to get across to everyone. And that's why we wanted to spend a little bit of time here with Carolina this morning to get that message across to everyone. So again, we'll post up the contact details on our social media platforms so that everyone can have them to reach out and assist in any way that you can. But definitely the way right now is monetary donations, folks. That is the bottom line. So thanks again for tuning in to another segment here with Cayman Mall Road.
I hear the people talking. What are they talking about? This world's gone crazy, and I'm trying to find a way out. Nobody knows where we're going, or if we're going at all. Nobody cares if we stand, if we have nowhere to fall. It's a sin.